I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. Some of you don't even really know, my background or myself or who I really am. But, as a young person, my father, he used to take me out to the airport, and we would sit at the runway in the car and we would watch airplanes take off. And he did all sorts of different ways to encourage me to pursue those things that I was interested in. And at that time it was aviation. And I just had a love for watching airplanes, take off. And it was just really amazing to me to be able to see that. And I had this exciting, dream that maybe one day I could, fly as a pilot. And my father was actually building an airplane in the basement of our house. It was an aluminum airplane, and he would drill and he would rivet and he would cut out, ribs and stringers. And unfortunately, he never finished that. He never finished building the airplane, and then he sold it. But what he did is he continued to build this desire in me for aviation. And then the time came when I was a young man in school, and they did some of those tests that they do to try to find your interests. And I took a test, and it said, hey, one of the things you could do is you could be an A&P or an aircraft mechanic. And I thought, I could be an aircraft mechanic. So at that point in time, I decided I was going to be an aircraft mechanic. So my mind started thinking about, how do I do this? And how do I accomplish this? And what do I do? And I remember very distinctly, I was 17 and a half years old, and I was a senior in high school. And I called up a friend of mine who was working for a company at the time called Control Data Corporation, CDC. And they were just putting digital onto hard disks. And I called him up and I said, this is really ridiculous that in order to be able to do an airworthiness directive search on an airplane, you have to get the paper, and you have to look at the paper, and you have to be able to look up the ADs that are applicable to an aircraft. And it's quite difficult to do that. And I asked him, I said, how do you put these pieces of paper onto a hard drive? Okay. This is a long time ago. I'm going to date myself now. This was 1977 when I was doing this. And so you see, I've been on this journey of wanting to bring people into the digital world in aviation for many, many years. And it's something that's been extremely important to me. And so you ask, why am I passionate about this? And that's because I have a long history of thinking about this. Well, listen, I went to work at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft Company, and I worked on military aircraft on the F-18. And one of the first things I did was they presented me with schedules that I was working on. And those schedules were done in pencil and on paper. We were doing manufacturing of F-18 aircraft by drawing schedules on paper. And I just said, there has to be a better way. And I began to look at, electronic or digital schedules at that time. This was early. And from there, I went on to work at Northwest Airlines. And at Northwest Airlines, I started working in engineering and technical publications and in technical training and in the shops. And I was actually consuming of digital data that existed out there. And this gave me a deep understanding of what the industry was doing. And it became very frustrating because I found that at times we had paper only, and we needed to dig in deeper, and we needed to be able to create electronic task orders, and we needed to be able to create, electronic manuals. And at that time, I transitioned from being a consumer of data to being a deliverer of digital and digital data. And for the last 20 years of my career, I focused on, how do I deliver digital data, digital information? How do I help companies with digital transformation to help them to be successful? And then you ask, well, where did that journey take me? Well, it took me all the way to where we are right now, where we're looking at blockchain in aviation. Now, why am I doing that? Why am I looking at blockchain in aviation? Because at different times in history, we've seen different things happen, which have caused a massive explosion in technology. And at the time of the internet, we saw a massive growth in technology when we went from using paper to now starting to do distributions, electronically.